and she convinced me to try it on. So I tried it on, and it's been a big change in my life. I was never a very godly person throughout my years at all. I've walked a lot of paths, and primarily I grew up in a very science-oriented, science-centric family. And so when I came to God, it was a lot of me trying to figure out, how do I blend these two? A lot of people kind of ignore one for the other, or say one disproves the other. Or, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I never liked that. I took this journey and I decided, how can I make these one? And I spent the last 9 years working on that. And then I saw an email about, hey, why not speak at church? And here we are. All my life I've wanted to understand the physical world. I've always been fascinated, especially after finding God, with the structure and components of this world lovingly crafted by our Creator. Whether it was done in a day, or a week, or across untold billions of years. This incredible place we call our home, not just Earth, but our entire universe, is utterly significant to our Father. But the creation of a universe is no simple feat on its own. There has to be rules, patterns, hardline specifics to make everything run as it should. As mankind has grown, we've learned to read some of the rules written by God. Unfortunately, for those who aren't mathematically inclined, like me, that language can be unbearably hard to read. I grew up in a home where my pops, my dad, encouraged me to be curious. I was given documentaries to watch, books to read, and games to play. As a child playing Magic School Bus educational games, I learned a lot about science, physics, and space. But the more I learned, the more questions I had. How did it all get here? And why does it all stay together? What makes something alive and something not alive? And just how much is actually out there? Turns out there's a lot more out there than I think any of us were ever ready for. So, what is God's relationship to us through science and physics? Within our physical existence, we are capable of perceiving 3 dimensions of space easily: length, width, and height. 3 easy planes that give all things depth and mass and volume. But what if it didn't end there? Science has been able to, if not entirely measure it, at least prove that there's a whole lot more highly likely to be there behind it all. Simple experiments that have examined the physics of an atom and how it behaves under different conditions. People love to say that time is a human invention or that it doesn't exist. But this is false. Time is a universal constant created by God for beings like us to perceive the difference from one moment to the next. Time, as measured, describes a universal change in state. Things were here, then they went here, and they were all across here to get here. That change in position or state is time, effectively. And time is a 4th dimension, and a 5th, and a 6th, and depending on how you want to wager, a 7th, 8th, 9th, and bordering on 10th dimension of planar space, Euclidean space. One which we are able to observe as a 4th dimension, but not directly interact. In fact, superstring theory says there should be 10 entire dimensions, 7 of them beyond our ability to perceive, that we simply aren't able to interact with or observe by the nature of our existence. Beyond time comes possibility, probability, and an infinite question of, but what if? What if you could observe all reasonable possibilities before any action? What if you could see into not just your own future, but any and all possibilities of that future? What if you could move between those possibilities? We observe time in a single dimension, the absolute moment, and nothing more. We cannot access the past or present, or past or future, only a perpetual now that slips by and is replaced with a brand new now every instant of existence. Imagine if our physical beings could perceive time in 2 or even 3 dimensions. 5th dimensional perception would allow us to view forwards and backwards across our timeline, including observation of nearby possibilities. 6th dimensional perception, or 3-dimensional time, would allow us to move freely across our own timelines as if it were a physical object. Walking from childhood to age 50, or from your life as a teacher to the lifetime where you chose to be a race car driver, would be as simple as a walk to the store. But what does this have to do with God? We're getting it. In an event known today as the two-slit experiment, science found that when unobserved, atoms don't always act in the way we expect them to, which would be as a solid mass. This opened up the door to a lot of different ideas of just what atoms could be and how exactly they work under different conditions. They found atoms can enter a super state where they take on all possibilities of themselves in that moment until they are observed or quantified. Primarily, this means solid mass can act as an energy wave under the correct circumstances. But what is that super state and why is it there? God didn't simply make things. He made things that make the things that make the things. Subatomic particles form atoms from elements that form molecules that form substances. The bigger or smaller something gets, physics acts differently around it. But how can things act in ways that they aren't supposed to until seen to be what they are supposed to be? What is significant about mortal eyes being able to quantify something that allows us to collapse the waveform and observe physical reality? The answer lies in the nature of the existence of a being like God, infinity itself. God created a universe that seems to be expanding at an increasing rate. The further away from centers things seem to get, the faster they seem to travel away. This has created what we understand as the observable universe. At the very edges of our universe, the edge is moving away from us so fast, light can't come back for us to see. It's essentially expanding beyond the speed of light, so any light that travels out can't ever possibly hope to come back because the distance is always increasing faster than it can travel.
You're doing well.
It is an area utterly unobservable. It exists in utter possibility as it simply cannot be quantified. This creates a dark bubble, the edge of observation, a defined limit. The God I've read about isn't a limited being and isn't a force or power that is held back by anything. So how can God create something with such a defined and absolute end? What if it's not the edge of creation, but merely a border separating us from the rest of God's creation? The walls of our home meant to contain us here within the bounds of the place our bodies were meant to exist. Science has theorized in many ways that our experience of reality may simply be one of an infinite number spread across infinite planes divided by impassable borders that our physical bodies simply cannot traverse. The Bible has evidence of these planes of existence, with heaven being one of them. A place utterly separate from physical creation, existing as a spiritual place free of sin, where God can truly inhabit. An alternate universe on its own, accessed through spiritual means via our connection to our Creator and Father. What does this have to do with our faith? We're getting there. It is theorized that life may exist in forms we cannot understand or perceive. Like an amoeba attempting to understand multicellular life like us, we are woefully under-equipped to observe a being like God. How could we perceive a being completely made of spirit or energy? How could we interpret a being to whom time is as much a physical object as a chair is to us? And what would exist beyond that life form? From what could all things, everything, anything at all, come forth? Endless possibility. The definition of infinite, one of the greatest descriptors of our God. Truly infinite, present before the beginning, there after the end, and within every moment in time and point in space between it. This is what I'm here to talk about very specifically this Sunday, and that is the power of infinity, and how we have been able to peer very shallowly into the world of God through our human ability to interpret the universe around us. God gave us minds and souls which yearn to grow, to learn. By examining the extremely small, quantum physics, humanity has been able to generate a vague scientific understanding of a being such as God. This isn't to say that I think we can understand God, but we certainly can use what we know from the Bible and from human study to begin to get a picture of just how our Father might exist in simple human terms. God's already beyond our understanding, of course, but we've been given enough that we can do an outline of a rough sketch. We know God acts without causality. That is, seemingly violates physics by requiring no cause or effect, no equal and opposite reaction. Something from nothing. But even that feels like a poor description, doesn't it? God is all things, everlasting and utterly infinite, so it's never something from nothing. Anything that comes from God comes because God is infinite, and all things and places all at once in every moment of time. So how do we move on from here, and how can we try to understand any of this? The answer lies within, in my opinion, quantum physics. The study of the physics of the extremely small. God is the single greatest physicist because he's the one who wrote the rules. The speed of light, that was God. Gravity, that was God. The reason your toe hurts after you hit it against the bed frame for the 5th time this week, that was God. And in this day and age, limited as we still are, we've come so far in attempting to understand it all that now we can look deeply into the atoms themselves and determine the underlying rules of this universe that our Father created. I'm losing my spot 5 times in a row. By studying atoms, subatomic particles, and how they interact with each other under extreme circumstances, we can learn about the very structure of reality. Devices like the Large Hadron Collider that accelerate atoms to nearly the speed of light, increasing their effective mass and smashing them into other atoms moving at similar speeds, revealing momentary interactions between them, showing us what these tiny things are made from, and the even smaller things that they're made from that interact with reality in stranger and stranger ways. Coming back to the 2-slit experiment, it shows that things exist within possibility, and it is only when quantified that it becomes definite. That is to say, all things of God live in infinity themselves until the life of this universe attempts to discern them. Which brings me to the biggest point I wanted to get to, which is infinite possibility and what that means for us and for God. Physicists have theorized, based on a whole lot of things we've learned about the structure of our own universe, that beyond the edges of our observable universe, distantly from our entire bubble of reality, could very well be other bubbles. Other universes beyond touch or sight. The product of an infinite being acting infinitely. While it doesn't affect us or our salvation very much, if at all, trying to understand this science is just as much trying to understand God as reading his words and praising his role in our lives. An infinite being is without end, and thus their creation would be as well. We know scientifically that eventually, many hundreds of trillions of years from now, the last lights of our universe will go out forever, leaving behind a cold, dark, dead universe awaiting collapse. But that's still only here, isn't it? And it isn't very infinite. So let's revisit possibility and its role with infinity. If infinite planes exist infinitely, there are infinite places exactly like our own, down to every last detail, and an infinity of places utterly dissimilar, and an infinity of places in between as similar or dissimilar in an infinite amount of ways. God's greatest abundance. Life and time and existence without end or boundary, wherein God exists at every point in time and every point in space simultaneously. Maybe it won't save our souls to understand who and what and why and how God is, but it warms my heart to know that my Father is, at least in some small manner, describable. That even with our weak human notions, we can scrape the surface to begin to understand just what it might be to be he who is, I am. To see God's patience in us, his will to be here for us, is utterly infinite. To see that with endless creation before him, every moment of time, every possibility, and every world, he's still here for us. That he so cares for his creation, he gave his only Son to help us along our clumsy path. It's a long-winded way to say, I'm utterly baffled and left speechless by God. A being existing beyond our human understanding, beyond 10 dimensions of space, who is all existence all at once, and yet is utterly separate from it, and yet crafted every subatomic particle, and is the center of all things that exists. I spent a lot of my life before finding God, trying to disprove God the way so many do, by saying that he simply cannot be objectively proven. But then science operates under so many probable ideas that make sense simply because they make the rest work, that they become accepted. I believe science not only proves but justifies the existence of God. It is truly as simple as believing in extraterrestrial life. Of course, it's extremely probable that more life exists out there, but we discount so often the idea that life could exist in any way other than what we've seen ourselves. If I can't scan it with my science ray, then surely it doesn't exist. But how likely is it that there is life we might never recognize as being living? Beings beyond physical need, to whom time and space are as malleable as silk. Beings with no need for physical bodies, who exist beyond 3 simple dimensions, who travel this great expanse at will. Beings who exist beyond probability. Beings who are utterly infinite. And above all, a single force, an energy, a living spirit who animates all existence, who moves the stars, who creates effortlessly and exists endlessly. Like an amoeba trying to understand a human, all we can do is put the clues together and try to get a picture of something so utterly beyond us and yet so close that to deny them is to deny all reality around you. Whether it be by a big bang or a simple word, all of this and more exists, with so much more beyond what we can see and touch. A God we feel in our souls, present in everything around us, which set all of us in motion and asked us to choose better. A loving Father who knew us before we were born and welcomes us after we die, who has seen us fail infinitely across time and space, who has been with us for every victory in every world, in every reality, who has been there for us no matter our circumstance, everywhere and anywhere. An infinite God, barely understandable, with infinite love for us, small things existing within the perpetual maelstrom of realities. His children set forth to explore all that which has been laid out for us, with God by our sides an infinite amount of times, in infinite possibilities, only ever asking that we give his love to each other and that we know him by his ways, and in doing so, teach others infinite love. That's all I had prepared.
Amen.